In 1927, a 27-year-old Yale graduate hired a float plane, secured a mailbag, and flew 90 miles from Key West, Florida to Havana, Cuba. That flight, short, bumpy, and barely noticed by anyone, was the first flight of Pan American World Airways. By the time its founder retired 41 years later, Pan Am was flying to 85 nations across 6 continents, had introduced the world to transatlantic jet travel, and had made international flight affordable for ordinary people for the first time in history. His name was Juan Trippe, and he is without question the man who shrank the world. Juan Terry Trippe was born on June 27, 1899 in Seabright, New Jersey. His father was a Wall Street investment banker. The name Juan came not from any Hispanic ancestry, but from his great-uncle's Venezuelan wife, Juanita Terry. He was educated at the Hill School and enrolled at Yale University in 1917, but left almost immediately when America entered the First World War, applying for flight training with the U.S. Navy. He completed his training in June 1918, was commissioned as an ensign, and never saw combat. The war ended too soon. He returned to Yale, graduated in 1921, and joined Wall Street. He lasted less than a year. Flying was all he could think about. In 1922, he raised money from his Yale classmates, tapping the network of wealthy, well-connected friends he had built through Skull and Bones and other societies, and founded Long Island Airways, an air taxi service for the rich. It was a modest business, but it taught him what he needed to know about aviation, about customers, and about how to use connections in government and finance to get what he wanted. That skill, leveraging relationships in government to secure routes and contracts, would define everything that followed. In 1925, Trippe invested in Colonial Air Transport, which won an airmail contract between New York and Boston. Then, in 1927, he maneuvered a 3-way merger of small airlines, appointed himself president of the resulting company, and turned his attention to the Caribbean. He secured the U.S. airmail contract to Cuba, the financial lifeline that would sustain early operations, and on October 19, 1927, Pan American Airways made its first flight. A hired Fairchild float plane carried the mail from Key West to Havana. The first paying passengers followed on January 16, 1928. 71 travelers paid approximately $50 each, the equivalent of around $2,500 today for the 90-mile journey. Trippe was 28 years old. He had just launched the airline that would become the unofficial flag carrier of the United States. He grew rapidly, island by island, through the Caribbean and into Latin America. He secured landing rights, airmail contracts, and government backing wherever he flew. By 1930, Pan American was the largest air transport company in the world. In the mid-1930s, Trippe set his sights on something far more ambitious: crossing the Pacific. The problem was infrastructure. There were no refueling stops between California and Asia, just thousands of miles of open ocean. Trippe's solution was characteristically audacious. He sailed to Wake Island, an uninhabited atoll in the middle of the Pacific, and built an airport on it. The enterprise cost millions. Within a year, the island had a runway, a hotel for overnight passengers, and regular service. In 1935, the China Clipper, a Martin M130 flying boat, took off from San Francisco on the first scheduled trans-Pacific passenger service, bound for Manila in the Philippines. Flying boats named Clippers became the signature of Pan Am, enormous, luxurious aircraft that offered the most glamorous travel experience the world had ever seen. Passengers dressed for dinner. They slept in berths. They crossed the Pacific in a style that ocean liners could barely match. Then Trippe turned to the Atlantic. On March 30, 1939, the Yankee Clipper departed Port Washington, New York, on the first scheduled transatlantic passenger service in history, bound for Lisbon, Portugal, and Marseille, France. Flying had crossed the world's greatest ocean. International travel would never be the same. World War II interrupted civilian aviation but did not slow Pan Am. The airline became a contract carrier for the U.S. government, flying more than 90 million miles in 19,000 transoceanic crossings. Trippe received the Medal of Merit from President Truman in 1946. After the war, Trippe did what he always did. He looked further ahead than anyone else. In the mid-1950s, virtually every airline executive in America was planning a gradual, cautious transition from propeller aircraft to the new turboprop planes that were just entering service. Jets, they believed, were years away from commercial viability. The catastrophic failure of Britain's de Havilland Comet, the first jet airliner, which had suffered 3 fatal crashes due to metal fatigue, had left the industry deeply skeptical. Trippe disagreed. In 1955, he placed an order for 20 Boeing 707s and 25 Douglas DC-8s, 45 jets before any other airline in the world had ordered one. Boeing and Douglas, suddenly certain of a viable market, threw their full resources into building them. Other airlines, confronted with Pan Am's order, realized they had no choice but to follow. Trippe had single-handedly started the jet age. On October 26, 1958, Pan Am's first scheduled transatlantic jet service departed New York for Paris. 111 passengers flew into the future. The jet era had begun, years ahead of where it would have been without him. But Trippe was not done. Even as the 707 was transforming international travel, he was thinking about what came next. He approached Bill Allen, the president of Boeing, with a request that Allen initially thought was impossible. Build a commercial aircraft 2.5 times bigger than the 707. Trippe's reasoning was simple. Bigger planes meant more seats. More seats meant lower cost per passenger. Lower costs meant lower ticket prices, and lower ticket prices meant more people could fly. Pan Am signed the contract for the Boeing 747 on Boeing's 50th anniversary. Pan Am was the launch customer. The 747, with its distinctive double-decker upper deck, its ability to carry more than 400 passengers, became the most iconic image of international travel in the 20th century, and it fulfilled exactly what Trippe had promised. It made international flying genuinely affordable for ordinary people for the first time. Juan Trippe retired as president and chief operating officer of Pan American World Airways on May 7, 1968. He had led the company for 41 years. It was flying to 85 nations on 6 continents. The men who followed him could not hold what he had built. Pan Am, denied domestic routes by the Civil Aeronautics Board and battered by foreign government-owned competitors who did not need to turn a profit, began a long decline. On December 4, 1991, a decade after Trippe's death on April 3, 1981, Pan Am went out of business. What did Juan Trippe actually build? 4 things that outlasted Pan Am. First, mass-market international air travel. Trippe's obsession was making flying affordable for ordinary people. Every time he cut prices through bigger planes, more efficient routes, and relentless pressure on aircraft manufacturers, more people flew. The 747 was his greatest instrument. It put international travel within reach of the middle class and kept it there. Second, the global route network template. Pan Am built the map of international aviation: Pacific, Atlantic, Latin America, Africa, Asia. Every international airline today flies routes Trippe pioneered and landing rights Trippe negotiated. Third, the jet age itself. His 1955 order for 45 jets forced every other airline to follow. Without that single bold decision, placed before anyone else was ready, at a scale no one else had imagined, the jet age arrives years later. Fourth, intercontinental hotels. Trippe's passengers needed somewhere to sleep, so he built a hotel company. Intercontinental Hotels and Resorts, today one of the world's largest hotel chains, exists because Juan Trippe needed beds for his passengers. 3 lessons from Juan Trippe's life. First, make your product cheaper and the market explodes. Every time Trippe cut ticket prices, more people flew and Pan Am grew. His belief that volume at lower prices beats exclusivity at high prices is the same insight that built McDonald's, Holiday Inn, and Amazon. It is one of the most reliable truths in business. Second, build the infrastructure the industry needs. No airport on Wake Island meant no Pacific routes. Trippe built what didn't exist yet, at his own cost, on an uninhabited island, because he could see the routes those investments would unlock. Build the infrastructure first, the business follows. Third, force the industry forward by going first. Ordering 45 jets before anyone else meant every competitor had to follow or fall behind. Going first, visibly, boldly, at scale, is itself a competitive strategy. It sets the standard everyone else is forced to meet. A hired float plane, 90 miles of ocean, a mailbag. From that first flight to 85 nations on 6 continents. From $50 a ticket to a fare ordinary families could afford. From a world where flying was for the rich to a world where the whole planet was within reach. Juan Trippe shrank the world, and it has never gone back. Thank you for joining us for episode 33. Our next episode is Henry Kaiser, the man who built Liberty ships during World War II faster than anyone thought humanly possible, and in doing so helped turn the tide of the war. Until then, stay curious.